What is up today, Dallas Cowboys fans? It is Victory Monday, the biggest Victory Monday the Dallas Cowboys have had this entire season. Week 18, we do know the Dallas Cowboys faced off against a division rival, the Washington Commanders. The Dallas Cowboys took care of business comfortably, very comfortably, I'm going to say. Dallas Cowboys 38, the Washington Commanders 10. This was a game, it kind of was, I guess I want to say it was a little slow development for the Dallas Cowboys early on. You see the Washington Commanders take a 10-7 lead at one point in this game. But right before halftime, the Dallas Cowboys took care of business. A score right before halftime, a score right after halftime, completely letting the Dallas Cowboys take control of this game. I'm going to say, keep it as simple as it is. This was a game the Dallas Cowboys had to have if they wanted to accomplish some of these goals going into the final season, the final week of the season, I'm going to say. Week 18, obviously. The Dallas Cowboys had a lot on the line. If you win this game against the Washington Commanders, the 4-12 Washington Commanders coming into the game, now 4-13 ending the season, then you're going to completely be able to knock off some of these checks. I'm going to say some of these things off the checklist, excuse me. Again, we're talking about win the game. You're going to be NFC East Division champions, obviously, and you're going to be able to take over that number 2 overall seed in the NFC playoffs. And we do know the Dallas Cowboys, I believe this season, are 16-0 or won their last 16 games at home and 8-0 this season at home. So the Dallas Cowboys are in full control of their future and their destiny in terms of just being able to have that home field advantage. You do know the Dallas Cowboys, obviously, a different team on the road. And that's I'm going to say a myriad of reasons, but possible reasons, I'm going to say, because, again, we're talking about crowd control. It's hard. Sometimes you can't have the same cadence. You can't check out of the same plays, the same audibles. It takes a little bit more communication than playing at home when you have the crowd exactly. Everybody's on your beck and call. So the Cowboys are now in perfect position to be able to find themselves with some playoff success. Hopefully, we do know this is now seeing Mike McCarthy leading the Dallas Cowboys to 3 straight 12-5 seasons. At the end of the day, we do know it's not about the regular season for the Dallas Cowboys franchise. It's about playoff wins and bringing some championships back to the city of Dallas. But it's a perfect start because one thing we can't complain about is we're not too far removed, I'm going to say, from the Jason Garrett era, where we're so used to these games that we're somehow blowing games we shouldn't just be blowing completely. And I'm going to say, under the Mike McCarthy era, the culture that he's built, this team usually does not drop these games that we should not. Of course, you're going to have your ups and downs. We do have the games here and there where you're talking about the Arizona Cardinals game this year. But for the most part, the Dallas Cowboys, if we're able to keep ourselves out of penalty trouble and just undisciplined mistakes, the Dallas Cowboys have shown that they're a very capable team. The Dallas Cowboys, once again, in the season with the 12-5 record, you're now going to ask yourself, what exactly is this team's ceiling? I feel like the Dallas Cowboys can accomplish anything that this team wants to do. We have the quarterback, in my personal opinion, to me, who should be the MVP. If you get rid of narratives, you get rid of team talk. We're talking about who played the best at the quarterback position this season. I don't see how you could give that nod to anybody but Dak Prescott. Of course, Lamar Jackson has had a great season himself, but I believe Dak Prescott should be the league's MVP. I'm sure it won't go to him. We have some of these other guys, of course. Now you're going to be able to ask, what exactly does he have to work with? We could talk about CeeDee Lamb yesterday, ending the season with 135 catches, I'm going to say. I believe 1,749 receiving yards. I believe, 12 touchdowns on the receiving touchdowns, and also another 2 on the ground. CeeDee Lamb showed himself to be that true number 1 wide receiver, especially heading to the postseason. What gets harder in the postseason? Games get closer. Teams are better, obviously. Teams are much closer when you're talking about matchups. So a lot of times what's going to separate it is just your playmakers being the playmakers that they are. CeeDee Lamb completely was unlocked this season. I'm going to say I give a lot of credit to Mike McCarthy, because obviously we're talking about the first 4 or 5 games of the season. People are asking, what is wrong with this offense? What's wrong with CeeDee Lamb? What's wrong with Dak Prescott? What's wrong with that combination in general? But now we've seen, once the offense opened itself up and we allowed Dak Prescott to take the reins of the offense, fully controlling everything, now you start to see guys like CeeDee Lamb even take another step above. You see Brandon Cooks now actually being that viable number 2 option. It depends on who you're going to call it for. Maybe Jake Ferguson. But I'm talking about on the receiver position, you have the guy right behind him who's probably playing complimentary ball to CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks. Another touchdown catch for him. I believe he ends the season with about 8 touchdown catches. Brandon Cooks is going to be a major player for the Dallas Cowboys in the postseason if we're going to to have some real success, because now one thing I talked about, obviously, we're talking about playmakers being able to make plays. And one thing is for sure, when you're talking about playing better defenses or just better coaches when it comes to adjustments, they're going to try to take away CeeDee Lamb as much as they can. Now, let's be clear, he is still a weapon. So you're going to be able to move guys around, which is what takes me to what I said about Mike McCarthy unlocking that level. If you watch Mike McCarthy, especially, he had some talented receivers in his tenure with the Green Bay Packers, whether you go to your Donald Drivers, whether you go to Greg Jennings, go to Devontae Adams, obviously talking about Jordy Nelson. Some of these guys that we saw him employ a lot of these different moves around. And we're talking about pre-snap motion. We're talking about sometimes you're going to be able to just get guys singled off in coverage one-on-one, and that's how you're going to be able to break some of these matchups. And we see a lot of that work is what we do now with the CeeDee Lamb, obviously moving him around, whether he plays slot, outside. CeeDee Lamb is just that consummate professional, and he's going to do whatever we're asking of him. But what he does have that separates him from most of these other receivers, again, the guys that are just the company men, CeeDee Lamb has that notch above where he can completely take over games. I'm expecting the Dallas Cowboys to ride that train a lot into the postseason, because one thing is for sure, we cannot, I'm going to say, I don't think we need to have to completely rely on our running game, but one thing our running game does give, if we're going to be able to have just some successful drives offensively, you're going to need guys like Tony Pollard to be able to get, so I guess I'm going to say, take some nice chunks out of the opposing defenses in the postseason. Obviously, Rico Dowdle to me is a guy I still have some faith in. We just have to keep him healthy. And I feel like now you're looking at a lot of these players and you're telling them 4 more games to your goal. If you're serious, if you actually want to bring back something real from this entire season and make all this work, to talk about the offseason work, the training camp, the preseason talk, make all of that actually mean something, the postseason is where you're going to get it done. 4 more games to your final goal, and if you can be able to knock that out, the Dallas Cowboys are going to be able to hoist that trophy. I don't want to get ahead, but as fans, it can't, I guess you can't say, it's not anything crazy for us to be able to get ourselves a little hyped up about this team's potential. We do know at the end of the day, the games are going to be played on the field. You cannot talk about it. You have to be about it. And I feel like this, I'm going to say, this specific roster, this specific roster combined with this specific coaching staff, I feel like we have all the pieces to make some noise. Like I said, obviously, we do know Dak Prescott is the spearhead of this offense. We're talking about Dak Prescott ending the season with 4,516 yards, 36 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So again, whether it's a misquote by the media, whether it's something he actually said, this whole narrative we've seen kind of things, Dak Prescott is a turnover-prone quarterback. That's never been Dak Prescott's makeup. Last year was one of those one-off things, but of course, being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, you're going to get blamed, you're going to get criticized, and people are going to overanalyze every little thing. But all of a sudden, it is funny how interception talk is not really a thing from the national media. As soon as Dak Prescott is not in the lead, I guess we'll say in the lead for turnover this year, it's funny how all of a sudden the interception, the fumbles, all that talk kind of goes to the wayside. But, of course, we know that's exactly how it goes. But for Dak Prescott, all the talent in the world that he does have, we're still going to need a running game, like I said. We're going to at least have something to be able to hold off some of these drives. Because one thing you can't say, you want Dak Prescott, even this offense, the way it's rolling through the passing game right now, you don't want to come into every single game and just saying we're passing the first down, second down, third down, and just continue to do that over and over. Because at some point, defenses will catch on, especially we're talking about teams potentially you could be facing. You don't want to get ahead, but we're talking about teams like the 49ers. You have some solid defenses in the postseason now. So you're going to be able to find some coaches. They're going to be able to adjust. Our running game is going to have to play a major part in what we do. And I don't mean necessarily in the frequency of running. But it's going to be about when we're running the ball and being smart with it. Tony Pollard, the season he's had, of course, people are being down on Tony Pollard all season. He's not exactly what we thought maybe the number 1 running back would be for the Dallas Cowboys this season. I'm talking about productivity. I'll speak about now with Zeke Elliott leaving the building and Tony Pollard taking over those full reins of being the number 1 feature back. But he still had a solid season. We're talking about in 17 games. I believe he averages 4 yards a carry overall, 6 rushing touchdowns on the ground, found the end zone yesterday, and he did rush for 70 yards yesterday to take his final rushing total 1,005 yards. So he snuck over that 1,000 yard threshold for the running back milestone for rushing yards. Every running back wants to run for 1,000 at least. Again, that's kind of your basic bottom of the level. But again, that's where most running backs will look at themselves as if they had a productive season. Tony Pollard said himself he doesn't feel like he produced the way that he hopefully thought for himself. But at the end of the day, All that doesn't matter. Everybody's 0-0 right now. We can get into the jokes. We can talk about the Eagles collapse. We can talk about all this. But for the Dallas Cowboys to stay focused, they have got to come into the next game against the Green Bay Packers, which we do know now it will be the Green Bay Packers. We can talk about that in a little bit. But the Dallas Cowboys have got to come out with the mentality that it's 0-0. None of these records matter. None of the teams you played matter. Nobody you beat earlier in this season matters. It's all about right now and taking advantage of the opportunity that is right in front of you. We do have some players. Let's talk about Micah Parsons yesterday, finally getting over that 13 sack threshold he always talks about. He feels like he's been stuck there the first few seasons in the league. But Micah Parsons with a sack yesterday takes him to 14 total for this season. Micah Parsons, we could talk about Defensive Player of the Year. If you're going by numbers, you're going by stats just alone. But if you're looking at just impact, guys, the win rate, the pass rush win rate, Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons is the leader of this defense, and he's a top 2, top 3, and I'm going to say personally, in my opinion, he's no less than top 2 best defensive players in this league because of his versatility, everything that Micah Parsons does. And one thing is for sure, I'm going to hope going into the postseason and going into next year, we're going to be sending out nasty amounts of tape so people can start to watch, and maybe these refs will maybe understand just the impact and the athlete that Micah Parsons is. You cannot officiate him the same way you do everyone else, because if you're watching, Micah Parsons is being held relentlessly, and now at some point you're going to understand as an offensive line, an opposing offensive line, if the referees and officiating is not going to, give you any consequences for what you're doing, they're going to continue to do it. And we've seen Micah Parsons again. He has to play against officiating. He has to play against just uncalled holding penalties, and just having to still be that special playmaker for the Dallas Cowboys. We need him to be everything that he is and a little bit more, because one thing is for sure, we're talking about sometimes what I will note is just about our defense overall. If we're not getting those splash plays, it can get us in trouble. And I'm talking about splash plays defensively, as in just forcing turnovers, which we did do a couple times yesterday. But if we're not getting those, we're relying too much on a guy like Micah Parsons. We're relying on some of just our heavy hitters, I'm going to say, to do a lot of this carrying. So we need this defense completely to just stay in tune and stay locked in. But Micah Parsons is exactly the player you want to have on your team going to the postseason. This is a guy you're going to look to potentially make some of these splash plays that can spearhead the Dallas Cowboys as an overall team going into the postseason. So we are excited about having a guy like that. And also talk about DaRon Bland yesterday, who does also end up with his 9th interception of the season. Again, perfect cap of the season. I don't want to say it was up and down. It wasn't up and down. There were a couple, I guess you want to say up and down games from a DaRon Bland, but overall, you leave this season with 9 interceptions, having to replace a Trayvon Diggs, which obviously earlier in the season and preseason, a guy like DaRon Bland is expected just to pretty much be that main dominant nickel corner that he's been for that first year in his career last season. But obviously adding Stephon Gilmore, who we lost to a little shoulder injury bang up yesterday. I believe his arm pops out of place, but then you're hearing that it gets popped back into place, and he says himself he would have been fine maybe to return if he had to, and he should be fine going forward. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But like I said, a guy like DaRon Bland having to play out of position all of a sudden, or not what he's basically used to, and then watching him just become this player that he is, still ending up with 9 interceptions that we already know, owning the NFL record now for most pick sixes in one season with 5. DaRon Bland obviously is a Pro Bowler this season. He should be at least second team All-Pro in my opinion. We're talking about a guy that leads the league in interceptions, but I'm going to say first team All-Pro. You just never know how exactly the national media is going to hold some things, because when it comes to Cowboys players, every little small technical thing matters apparently. So just having some of these guys that we do have going to the postseason is going to play major dividends. Talk about Donovan Wilson yesterday, who also ends up with a nice interception. Back-to-back weeks, bringing his season total to 2 interceptions in the last couple weeks. So a guy like, again, Donovan Wilson, we're going to need a plethora of some of these players to make plays and step up, because we do know Dan Quinn's defense is all about versatility, moving guys around, finding chess pieces. And if you're able to just kind of make some of this noise and the offense is actually rolling, I guess, to the ability, the fullest capabilities and ability that this offense has shown, we're going to be in good hands because the Dallas Cowboys are starting to form themselves into an all-around solid team. And you don't want to go too, I guess you want to say you want to get too crazy because let's be clear. This was the now 4-13 Washington Commanders. But again, the Dallas Cowboys did take the division record this season to 5-1. And I believe what Dak Prescott is about 32-8, or Dak Prescott led teams, I'm going to say 32-8, 32 or something like that. I believe his overall career record in NFC East division games. So this is a game that the Dallas Cowboys should have taken advantage of, and this team actually did. So it's just good to see that some of these pieces are actually starting to just produce. Jordan Lewis deserves so much love. I cannot miss out on a guy like that. The interceptions, the forced fumbles, which he had yesterday, and also the fumble recovery on the same play. Jordan Lewis is going to be one of these X-Factor type players. We're talking about, obviously, I said Deron Bland was going to be your main nickel corner coming out of training camp. And obviously, that's what Jordan Lewis has predominantly played for the Dallas Cowboys since being drafted some years ago. But Jordan Lewis, of course, the injury, sometimes things happen, but finding himself back in the mix, playing that nickel corner after losing a Trayvon Diggs, Jordan Lewis has stepped up majorly. He's going to be a guy that you're going to want to keep an eye on in these postseason games coming forth for the Dallas Cowboys. So Jordan Lewis, just another some of these players, like I said, but Donovan Wilson, these are some special players for the Dallas Cowboys, especially. They're very important to what we do overall because of their versatility. So if we can continue to just lock some of these things down, again, just stay out of some of these issues that comes to just penalties, that comes with just undisciplined holding, things like that. The Dallas Cowboys have a high trajectory, and I can see us beating literally any team that's left in the postseason. And that means, for me personally, I'm going to say NFC and AFC. Of course, you have to take it one game at a time, but you have got to focus. And if this team does, I feel like there's high potential. Yesterday, unfortunately, and I'm going to put it completely on the commentators, they're talking about it, and sometimes, for some reason, I don't even try to get into superstitious things too much, but of course it usually goes bad when you hear the media talking about records and guys being 100% on anything. Greg Olsen and the guys yesterday on the commentator side of the game yesterday, but obviously we do know coming into the game, Brandon Aubrey was 35 of 35. That is the longest streak for, I guess you want to say, for a start of an NFL career, 35 of 35. And I believe the record was like 37 of 37 or 38 of 38 for the NFL record for most kicks in a season made without a miss. Obviously, yesterday, then it's talked about, and what happens on the very first field goal attempt for Brandon Aubrey? It gets blocked. Just terrible blocking. He didn't even have a chance. It gets blocked. So now that perfect record is completely gone. Then Brandon Aubrey is going to get another opportunity. I believe it was 32 yards or 38 yards. I know it's in a 30-yard range. And right off the left upright, it completely you hear the loud noise over here in Dallas. But it was one of those things where maybe his mind's a little bit shaky a little bit. But I'm not going to say as in he lost confidence in anything. I kind of joked about it yesterday. I said the Brett Maher curse is back because Brett Maher had a nice solid season last year. Of course, we played the Washington Commanders in the final week last year, and that's where things fell off the tracks completely. And he carried that over into the postseason for the Dallas Cowboys to the point where we weren't even comfortable kicking extra points. It was not a pretty look at all. Luckily, Mike McCarthy, which I'm a big fan of small things like this, gave Brandon Aubrey another opportunity. Once the starters are finally pulled out of the game, Cooper rushes in. We lead it down there, and Brandon Aubrey ends up having another 50-yard attempt, and this is right down the middle. I don't worry about Brandon Aubrey at all. I believe so his final kick count for the season is 36 of 38, I believe. Still a very good season. We're already talking about a guy that's obviously Pro Bowl level this season, and to me personally, all pro. You can't just completely disregard everything that he's done for this entirety of the season. But the Dallas Cowboys, again, to me personally, we still have a very nice kicker that's actually a weapon, not just a guy that we can talk about pretty much being able to come make some of these chip shots. We're talking about a guy that we've seen make 60 yarders and plus, and he has full confidence in himself. This coaching staff does. John Bones, obviously, John Fossil, excuse me, your special teams coach has the utmost confidence in a guy like Brandon Aubrey. So continue to get him some work. Continue to keep his mind where it needs to be this week going into the postseason, because we do know playoff games, sometimes they will come down to a final kick or final couple points, and you have got to add them up as you go throughout the entirety of a game. So The Dallas Cowboys, I'm feeling very good about where we are. On offense, I'm going to say defense is up and down to me as it goes week by week. The offense is up and down based on our discipline that we're going to show that game and just execution. But if everything is rolling the way it needs to be, offense, defense, and special teams for the Dallas Cowboys are definitely championship caliber. The Dallas Cowboys' next game, the first postseason game for the Dallas Cowboys this season, will be on January 14, 2024. I believe that it will be that Sunday, although that's a Sunday at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. Of course, we don't even have to get into the history of the Dallas Cowboys, the Green Bay Packers, the postseason, Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy being the former head coach of the Green Bay Packers during some of those games. Of course, we don't have to get into, of course, we know the Dez Carter game. We also know the 3rd and 20 game. So Cowboys fans, I'm sure we have some, I don't want to say some pessimism. We have some, again, maybe just some caution. Coming into this game with a little bit of caution. You do know you still have to handle your business because at the end of the day, you can be the better team on paper, but you have to handle your business that day between the lines because the Green Bay Packers are going to come in there. They have a quarterback, Jordan Love, who just threw for 32 touchdown passes, a guy who just took over the reins, and you saw him improving as the season went on. And this is going to be a guy, I will say, if the Dallas Cowboys are not coming out ready and you're not playing discipline on the defensive side of the ball, like I spoke about, you will be able to find yourself in some trouble because they have some capable players. Whether Aaron Jones is a focal point of this game coming up against the Dallas Cowboys, he has dealt with some injuries this year, talking about the Green Bay Packers running back. But we do know he's had some success against the Dallas Cowboys as well. So handle your business, lock in, stay focused. We'll talk about this game against the Packers a little bit more. But as we all know, once again, the Dallas Cowboys have locked up the division crown, the NFC East crown. Also the number 2 seed for the entirety of the playoffs. So barring something crazy happening, the Dallas Cowboys are going to be able to have some home games. But if you're able to see a team like the San Francisco 49ers be knocked off, maybe we'll see. They're going to also have face some tough opponents themselves. The Dallas Cowboys could potentially have an NFC Championship game hosted at Cowboys Stadium, and that will be insane. Just being able, that will be the final road before you could possibly find yourself playing the Super Bowl again. As fans, we can talk about this stuff. I don't think the players are going to be losing focus anytime soon because all you heard yesterday after the Washington game is the job is not finished, echoed from multiple players. So I feel like this Cowboys team is completely locked in. Mike McCarthy, the issues that he does have, we will have with the Mike McCarthy at certain points. I guess you want to say certain things that we have to deal with the Mike McCarthy as a play caller and just as an offensive coach in general, the head coach of the team. One thing I will for sure give him again is that he is now building a culture. And we're talking about a culture where guys are not complacent and guys are not necessarily just happy to be here. You want to see some players actually shine. And I feel like we have, I guess, or at least if we're not having, we're at least starting to build where you're having that roster and the coaching staff being on the same page. I appreciate you guys for all the support. We have a big week coming up ahead. Of course, we will have more talk about the Packers versus the Cowboys in this first postseason game for the Cowboys this year. And we will always get into it. But I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and keep liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing. You guys are amazing, and you are the focal point of this channel. I want you guys to always know that. I appreciate you. And once again, go Cowboys.